So we are now recording, and welcome this afternoon, and thank you for coming to our edTPA teacher candidate debrief. And I really want to, first of all, thank all the panelists who are here today. We have students who are representing each of the programs. We have folks from K-5 main campus. If you're K-5 main campus, you can wave your hand. And we have folks who are from secondary ed undergrad, and you can wave. And we have folks who are MAT. And we have some SPED folks, special ed folks, good. And early childhood folks. And we even have some people from our cohorts, and if they would wave also. So I really want to thank everybody for coming, and all of our participants, our faculty who are here to hear what our students have to say. I'm going to ask that everybody keep their mic on mute except when they're speaking. And if you could hold your questions for our panelists until the end, I think that would be helpful. Also, if you have a question, you can either write it down and hold it until the end, or you could put it in our chat box. So we'll get started. And the first question I have is for Abigail Reese. And Abby, if you would first introduce yourself and then tell us in what ways was the edTPA experience positive? Or what did you learn while completing the edTPA?
Hi, so yes, I'm Abigail Reese. If I've had you, you may have very well known me as Abby, but I'm in the MAT program. And to answer this question, I jotted down some notes and thought, although the edTPA was pretty tedious, I thought it allowed for effective practice to incorporate all the moving parts that we've learned about lesson planning. For example, I remember earlier in the program, we learned about the idea of using assessments in preparing for future assessment or future lessons even. And although that made sense at the time, I didn't really understand what that looked like until I completed the edTPA. And having to do all of the little pieces of saying, okay, well, here's my data. And being math, that was very easy for me to read and understand. But until I was able to look at it and break it up for my focus students, it really put a new meaning behind what it meant to look at my assessments and have that influence where my future lessons were going.
Thank you so much for that thoughtful response. Very good, thank you. And I'm going to see if Andrew McGinnis has something that he would like to add. Andrew, if you would just unmute yourself and introduce yourself and tell us what you might have to add.
Sure. My name is Andrew McGinnis, and I'm in the special ed program. One of the things that I pulled away from it as being a major positive for me was it was so educational in terms of it allowed me to understand why justification was so important about what we do, excuse me, as teachers and professionals. A lot of edTPA, in my opinion, seemed to be you were really justifying what you were doing, why you were doing it, and how that was going to impact your focus learner, especially in special education. So the justification process of edTPA was probably my biggest positive and my biggest takeaway from this whole experience.
Thank you very much. And Katie Diamond, please introduce yourself and add to our discussion.
Hi, I'm Katie Diamond. I'm in the K-5 program on the main campus. And one thing that I would like to add is I thought it was very helpful in videoing the lessons. That way you could see your own teaching practices and see what you needed to improve on and what you could do in the future to help your instruction.
Thank you very much. So our next question, we're going to start with Haley Stewart. And the question is, at what point in your program did you learn what the edTPA was?
Hello, yeah, my name is Haley Stewart and I am secondary education. So I was first introduced to the term edTPA during my residency orientation. However, when I was first introduced to the term, it was still unclear to me at the time exactly what the assessment was. It really wasn't until pre-residency, and that was kind of the point that I began to learn what the edTPA was, what it consisted of, what we were being assessed on, and what the purpose of it was.
Thank you very much. Alex Pace, how about you? When did you first learn about the edTPA?
Alex Pace, I'm in the MAT middle grades program. I first heard about it at our orientation, probably a month before I actually started the MAT program, but it was really abstract at the time. It was just, oh, this is your licensing exam. So I still didn't really know. Is it kind of like the praxis? Is it, what is it? In my, let's see, what was it? It was the foundations class I had my first semester that was on Saturdays. That's when we first really started talking about what it was, and started sort of kind of grasping what it entailed. But I'd say that I really got a good footing on it in my first, it was the middle grades. It was in the fall. It was like the middle grades seminar. It was like the fall seminar. I forget what the exact, with Miss Cloud. Hey, Miss Cloud.
Yes,
And that's when we really started breaking it down and doing some sort of example stuff. And I think that's when I really, really, really grasped what the edTPA was.
Thank you so much, Alex. And we have Michaela Bright. Michaela, do you go by Bright or Sullivan?
I go by Bright. I got married within this whole period, so.
Well, congratulations. And if you could also address this question, then we would have somebody from a variety of programs.
Yes. So I'm Michaela Bright, and I'm from the cohort program. I've heard about the edTPA ever since I heard about, like, I wanted to be a teacher, and I talked around to people, and they were like, the edTPA. But so that's when I heard about it. But when I started to learn about it was, I agree, pre-residency. They start to throw around the term and let you know that, hey, this is coming up. And they would always say, don't wait till the last minute. This is something that you continually have to work on. So I would say about pre-residency is when the term really started to come up, and then that's when we started to go forth with it after that.
Thank you so much. So we're going to go on to our next question, and this is going to be for Katie Norsen, who's also from our cohort. What misconceptions did you have about the edTPA prior to working on it?
Hi, I'm Katie Norsen, and I'm from the Sevierville cohort. One of the misconceptions I think I had was the amount of time it truly took to complete each task. I feel that it was like, and this semester it felt really short, but the winter semester I felt very relaxed, and I felt like I had enough time. I didn't realize how much crunch time, how fast it would be April. So I think that was a big misconception. They always said last semester to get a jump on what you're going to be doing, talk to your mentor. And I don't feel that I got that jump right away because I was like, I have time. There's plenty of time. So I think one of the big things is how much time it takes.
Thank you very much. And Shane Carroll, what misconceptions did you have about the edTPA?
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
So I'm in the MAT program, but I was also a secondary ed minor up until I boarded into the program, and then I switched. And I'll get into those reasons later, but I think the biggest misconception I had about the edTPA was also the amount of time it would take. It seemed like ever since pre-residency, really going off of what the other students have said, that since pre-residency we're really gearing up for the edTPA, and then we hit the planning commentary, which is task 1. And if you don't know where you're going to be in January at the beginning of November because your mentor teacher hasn't mapped that out yet, you're kind of left in the dark. And so at least for me, one of the biggest misconceptions was the edTPA itself is a gigantic hassle, but it's also coordinating that with your mentor teacher is a huge aspect that luckily my mentor teacher was extremely flexible with me, but I know not many other students had that flexibility of you can teach this at this day and that's okay. Some other students had to my understanding, change their entire planning within a week. And so their entire planning for the fall semester just goes out the window. So to me, the biggest misconception was not just the amount of time, but the coordinating with your mentor teacher and having that mentor teacher truly understand what you need to do as a student teacher for this process.
Lots of heads nodding. Krysta, would you like to chime in on this as well?
Yes, my name is Krysta Chong, and I am K5 at the main campus. One misconception I think that I had personally was just actually knowing exactly what the edTPA was. I feel like a lot of my misconceptions came from actually getting like false information from like maybe professors not really knowing exactly what was required of the edTPA. And so I feel like a lot of my misconceptions came from that.
And what a great segue into our next question, which is, what misconceptions do you believe faculty has about the edTPA? And we're going to start with Jordan Williamson.
Hi, I'm Jordan Williamson, and I'm at the main campus, and I'm K through 5. One of the things I really thought that one of the misconceptions I thought faculty had about the edTPA was that they think we know more than we actually know. There's a lot of times in my junior year that teachers would refer to the edTPA by saying, oh, you'll do something similar to this on the edTPA, and I was like, I don't know what that is really. So I hadn't really got an explanation of what it was, and it just appeared that everyone just assumed that someone else was going to tell us about it. So for me, when they were given all these examples of, oh, you'll do this on the edTPA, or this is similar to what you'll do, I felt like the faculty, specifically my junior year, thought we knew more than we actually did.
Thank you very much. Lindsey Hamby, do I have that right?
Yes. Hi, I'm Lindsey.
Hi.
I am pre-K through 3rd licensure at the main campus. And this was actually the one question I knew I would get because I couldn't think of an answer. I spent about 20 minutes thinking of one. And with my experience with the faculty, they were all extremely helpful. And I really think that they told me everything I needed to know, and they prepared us really well. So for me, I could not think of any misconceptions that the faculty had, but that's just in my experience.
Well, that is great news, and I'm not one to turn down good news. Haley Hodgson, how about your experience?
Hello, I'm Haley Hodgson, and I am part of the main campus K5 program. And one misconception I think that some faculty may have had is how much time it actually takes in R1 to kind of prep for the edTPA. So we have a lot of assignments. R1 is very stressful, very cram-packed, and I felt like sometimes like they were talking about the edTPA, like the prep work, but there never was that time, like when were we expected to kind of have that time to prep? But other than that, I think that they all seem to be very knowledgeable of what the edTPA was, kind of what our tasks were going to be throughout the edTPA. So I think it was just that time commitment and like where they expected us to kind of fit that in.
So I apologize for the dogs barking. Some of you may know that I've had trees fall at my house from the storm. We've got workers here and dogs, and you know, the challenges of working at home. So I appreciate your patience. Thank you for that answer, Haley. We're going now to Hannah Kilgore. And Hannah, your question is, how do you perceive faculty's attitude towards the edTPA? And how does or how did that affect your own attitude?
Hi, I'm Hannah. I'm in the undergrad, secondary English, and I perceived the attitude towards the edTPA being just very negative, and that just with it being so difficult, and it was this awful experience and terrible thing, and that just really stressed me out. And then when I got to it, I was like, oh, like this takes a lot of work, but like the work itself isn't terribly difficult. But I was just expecting it to be terribly the worst thing in the world.
Thank you, Hannah. Seth Davenport, what would you have to add?
I would just, or hi, my name's Seth Davenport. Sorry, I'm from the SPED department. I would say that, like, in general, everyone just kind of felt a little tense and just kind of like, as a faculty, just kind of like, hey, like, are we all doing the right things? Are we following the right steps and like doing all this edTPA? Just kind of like worried if we're like getting the right things done. And I mean, that didn't really come down on me. Like, edTPA was like stressful enough in and of itself, but just kind of like the faculty's view of it was just kind of like, hey, we want you to pass, we want you to do good, but it kind of could be perceived as like, hey, are you getting this done or not? Like, are you doing the right things? And so I think it was just like a big overwhelming thing for everybody, really.
Thank you, Seth. Kayla, how about your experience?
Am I the only Michaela?
Kayla Runyon.
Okay. Okay.
Kayla
Okay.
Runyon.
Okay. Hey everybody. I'm Kayla Runyon, and I am a part of the K-5 program on the main campus. And I felt like, in general, that the faculty kind of perceived the edTPA as a subjective way to assess upcoming teachers, but they did, try to stay positive and encourage us that, it can be a manageable task. And I do feel like one positive thing that kind of reflected on me as far as their attitude was that they felt like the required reflection of the edTPA would help benefit our teaching practices. So that was something that, helped me remain positive and kind of push forward.
Thank you, Kayla. Catherine Rambo, this question is for you. In preparing you for the edTPA, what teaching strategies or materials helped you the most?
So honestly, my edTPA coach was wonderful, and she was a big help. And I know that depends probably on the coach that you get, but I think that that's a really good thing to keep going. Seeing real examples in class, like nothing beats just being able to see the videos and other people's writings. That was the best thing. And also discussing the rubrics in class, like Miss Shelton and Miss Castle would say, oh, I want you to highlight what word you think would boost you up to a 4 or 5. And it's really tedious to go through that, so it just makes it better to do it with people and to be able to talk about it. And then just that peer review time, like that would be another big thing, that once again, just seeing somebody else's and reading through it and kind of comparing was the best thing.
Thank you, Katie. And you're from early childhood, is that correct?
Yes, sorry.
Are you main campus?
Yes.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for that great response. And do we have Isaac Saltz here today?
Yes.
Oh, there you are, Isaac. I'm sorry. I have a question for the same question for you. And this will be a little bit interesting coming from you, especially since you are, I think, our one music person here today.
Yes.
And
so the biggest
so if you would just answer the same question. Thank you. Sorry.
The biggest thing that I would say helped me getting into it was observing in the classroom before starting the edTPA and just seeing what worked and didn't work in the real, in the trenches. That was my biggest thing, I think.
That's great. Thank you. And Abigail, we're back to you with the same question.
Yes, I think that I agree that the coaching materials helped a lot. Seeing those examples, I had a great coach, and even though she was much more involved at the start than she was during or towards the end, I always knew that I had that resource if I needed to go to her and say, I have these questions or anything like that. But also being part of the MAT program, I'm not sure if everyone else had this assessment or assignment, but the video assignment we did where we practiced videoing ourselves and trying to jam pack as much good edTPA content as we possibly could into a 20-minute section and having to go through and see if we checked all those boxes for our rubrics. I think I learned a lot about those rubrics for the instruction commentary and just about what the edTPA in general was going to be looking for me to do.
Thank you very much. And then this next question, we're going to start with Andrew McGinnis. What was some vocabulary that you were unfamiliar with when you started the edTPA? And we're going to sort of combine this question with another one. It could be vocabulary that you struggled with or even concepts that you struggled with prior to the edTPA.
Or for me, in terms of vocabulary, there weren't any major terms that I was unaware of. However, there was one that I got to, and it's in Task 2, Commentary, Question 3, Part B, and it was talking about self-determination and having to move a child in their learning to self-determination. I can remember getting to that specific question thinking, what the heck am I supposed to talk about here? I'm not sure what it's asking me. And I had to go to my seminar leader to get help on that specific word. But other vocabulary and other concepts, I felt pretty comfortable with everything that I was coming across during the edTPA process.
Thank you. Katie Diamond, what vocabulary or concepts do you feel you were unfamiliar with when you began the edTPA?
So I have a couple things here that I wrote down. The first thing that I wrote down is I had trouble trying to figure out how a central focus, related skills, essential literacy strategy, how all that fit together and how that worked within a lesson. So that was some vocabulary that I was unfamiliar with, and I just really was unsure at the beginning how to make all that fit. And then something else, this goes more with the next question, like what practices, no, I'm sorry, not that one. Some concepts that I was unfamiliar with. I really felt that I was unfamiliar with how to write in a professional academic tone. I feel like up to this point, what I was writing was more a conversation, casual type tone. And for the edTPA, it's really important to write in that more professional tone, I guess. So that was something that I was unfamiliar with and had to kind of teach myself how to do.
Thank you, Katie, for that thoughtful response. Hey, and I've got a chainsaw behind me now, so sorry about that. Haley Stewart, what vocabulary and concepts were you unfamiliar with when you began?
So I have a few, I have a couple of things written down for this. Speaking from being a secondary education minor, starting out, I was very unfamiliar with the whole language demands section of the lesson plan because before residency, I hadn't been required to fill out that box, or we hadn't really discussed any of the terms such as functions, syntax, discourse. We hadn't discussed any of the language supports. So a lot of that vocabulary and terminology was very unfamiliar to me before starting residency. Let's see. And then also within that, the language supports and when speaking about general targeted and individual supports before residency, what supports like fall under what category or how you break those down. This is a whole that was a very unfamiliar topic to me.
Thank you so much. Alex, I'm going to ask you the same question. We're going to have several respond to this question.
I would say that I had quite a bit of confusion over like the language function, not so much the demands, syntax and discourse and all that, but just what the function was. And when you look at like the lesson plan template, You kind of underline your verbs and your objectives. And I always thought, for a long time, I thought that was the language function. And so I got really tied up, confused between the difference. So that's one that I know, that's just something I think that if you look around on YouTube and look at your videos, that's just something I think that people are always going to have a little heartburn about. But that was probably the biggest one for me.
And Michaela Bright?
For me, I would say for vocabulary, the SSE. I remember watching your videos because you would post videos and I would watch them, and you would always say that, and I'd be like, I've got that in there somewhere. But you would keep repeating it. I'm like, man, I don't think I'm doing this right. So once I finally understood, it was super clear. I was math, so it was super clear after that. But that was one thing that really had me confused at the very beginning. And also for concepts, I would say that writing in a professional tone, that was mine as well, because I would say things and I'm like, well, maybe I should Google a synonym for that word to make it sound smarter. Like I couldn't figure out what to do, but that's what I would also say, like just writing in a professional tone to get my point across. So that's something I struggled with.
Thank you so much. And we're going to go now to a different question, and I'm going to start with Katie Norsen. And what do you wish that you had more practice with before you began the edTPA?
I wrote down one of the things that I think that we could have had more practice with was how to take your first lesson and build your second lesson upon your first lesson, and then take your third and build it upon the three, just to blend it. When I first started writing the edTPA, I felt like my lessons were three completely different. I didn't even know what I was doing. But then when I revised it, I built each lesson upon each other. I think that would have helped a little more just to clarify what I was teaching. It just felt like I was just spitting out 3 lesson plans. I felt like it was really rushed. So I think that discussing how to build upon lesson plans would help to get that final assessment that you're taking.
Shane, how about you? You're muted.
Oh, hello. Is this number 9 with the more practice? Okay. I wish I had more practice with writing objectives. And the reason I say that was not just in the MAT program, because I was taught this at the beginning of the MAT program, but also within my entire duration as a secondary education minor before I dropped and I switched minors. Objective format A, B, C, D. And the more I got into the program, the more I realized if we drop that C and D part, like I want my students to analyze this. You keep it very simple. And at least for me in history, I don't really want to focus if they can memorize this with this much % of an accuracy. I'm testing their growth of their critical thinking, and that's what I get through history, and that's, I think, what we all get as teachers. So I think I wish I had more practice writing objectives, but also a clear image of here's what objectives are needed, because I feel like there was such a disparity between all aspects of the college between what's a proper objective for education.
Thank you very much. And Krysta, your response.
I don't really feel like, I mean, of course there was things that I needed practice on, but I really did feel like I got the best practice because I remember even us doing stuff in Dr. Price's class and Dr. Robertson's class with our lesson plans and the lesson plan rubrics. I felt like that gave me a lot of practice. But one thing that I felt that we did use a lot to practice was like peer evaluations. And I personally didn't ever feel like that was a good strategy, because I felt like if I didn't know what I was doing and like somebody else didn't know what they were doing, it was hard for me to like kind of be like, okay, well, you know, if you don't know what you're doing and I don't know what I'm doing, then how am I supposed to evaluate your work? So, but I really do feel like I did get a lot of practice in with the stuff that we did throughout Residency 1 and 2.
Thank you, Krysta. And again, I apologize for the chainsaws. So this next question is going to go to Jordan Williamson. What suggestions do you have for faculty to help future pre-service teachers?
I wrote a couple of different things down for this one. And one of them was sort of like Krysta talked about. We did have that practice with specific things that were related to the edTPA in our Residency 1. Like she said, Dr. Price gave us the task analysis project, and then Dr. Robertson and Dr. Moran, similar assignments. But I think having something like a shorter version of something related to that for our junior level classes so that it can be more familiarized, because once we got to Residency 1, I felt super overwhelmed and super stressed having all of those classes on top of having to go into the classroom. So I think that just sort of expanding that out a little bit into our junior year. And then another thing I wrote was the College of Education is really good about giving feedback and helping us with anything that we need help with in terms of assignments. But I learned when I got to the edTPA, I was so prone to expecting that feedback, and it was very specified feedback, that I wasn't going to get it anymore. So for me, it was a big transition to, oh, I can't get the feedback on this because we're not allowed to have that kind of specific feedback anymore. So just sort of taking away some of that feedback a little bit earlier so we can get more confident in ourselves.
Well, thank you very much. I had not thought of that. Lindsey Hamby, same question. What suggestions do you have for faculty to help future pre-service teachers?
I would say maybe for mine, just talking about the task and what all needs to be included a little sooner, because I would finish up with a task and then come to class, and sometimes they would say a lot of things that I would think, oh, I should have included that. I need to go back. And then I would get confused on if I needed to go back and change it, because I wouldn't want to go and change a lot. But just that's one thing, is talking about it a little bit sooner.
Thank you. And Haley Hodgson.
Hey, so one thing that I wrote down for this was having the students look at the prompts specifically and actually reading those questions that they'll be answering later on. I know a couple of you have mentioned how Dr. Price and Dr. Robertson had kind of pulled in those analysis assignments. And I thought those really helped me with task 3, but it would have kind of brought it to the next level if we had had the opportunity to actually look at those prompts and be like, oh, these are the questions we'll actually be answering. So I think if that could be incorporated a little bit more throughout, the actual prompt wouldn't be so scary. We wouldn't be so terrified to look, to actually look at that page. It would be just, oh yeah, we did that last semester or something like that.
Thank you. And I'm going to go now to a new question, and this is going to be for Hannah Kilgore. What is our faculty doing well in its preparation for this assessment? Do you have a shout out to anyone in particular?
Well, for one, your videos, as I was actually writing the edTPA with how to write this put, was extremely helpful when I came to actually writing it. And I think the methods classes were super helpful for me. I think I learned so much in that, and it helped me as not just for the edTPA, but actually with teaching. And then first learning how to write a lesson plan in Mr. Jenkinson's class was really helpful, and just that direct instruction on how to do it, because after that I didn't really get that, and I think I needed some practice, and that was really helpful. So.
Thank you very much. And this will also be Seth Davenport's question. What is the faculty doing well in its preparation? Do you have any shout outs?
Sorry. First thing I want to do is shout out Professor Cook. It was like her first year doing edTPA, and she was extremely helpful and very professional too. And having that one day where she bought us pizza and drinks for like I think it was like our working day, like just having her there and supporting us with snacks and stuff, like that was great. I think one of the things like the faculty is doing well is just kind of like talking about how important edTPA is, and like going through the process, because really like edTPA is just like documenting good teaching, and it's of course it's not realistic, and I think the like faculty knows that, like you're not going to write 30 pages for 3 lessons or whatnot, but like the faculty understands that. And so I think like being able like as a faculty to like explain to us that, hey, like we get that this is ridiculous, like we understand like the position you're in, but like it's kind of documenting good teaching. So all in all, like I'm just thankful for the faculty and like the resources they provide to me and helping me get through this semester.
Thank you, Seth. And then Kayla Runyon, your response?
Okay, so I wrote down several things for this. I think overall, the faculty is doing a great job in preparing us for several different parts of the assessment. I think one of those being making sure that everything's aligned, and also preparing us to consider differentiation when IEPs and 504s are involved. Some of my shout outs were Dr. Moran. Her unit lesson plan was really helpful in terms of getting started on writing our actual lesson plans for the edTPA if you took advantage of that opportunity. I also think that Dr. Jennings' class was particularly helpful to consider different types of assessment for literacy instruction. And Dr. Price helped a lot with analyzing student work and helping us make a table, and that really helped me prepare for task 3. And then finally, Dr. Robertson had a really helpful graphic about the language demands, which I felt was super helpful for me personally, because I didn't have the best grasp on that before her class. And she was also helpful about like helping us dive into the rubrics and actually deciding, you know, what is each level of criteria asking. So that was really helpful transitioning to the edTPA and figuring out, okay, what's the difference between a 3 and a 4? Just having that practice was helpful.
Thank you so much, Kayla. So our next question is, what advice would you give students entering Residency I in the fall? And this is we're going to begin with Catherine Rambo.
Okay, so my biggest advice would be time management. In our seminar classes, our professors gave us like a due date that your draft should be done. I would say, like, of course it's a draft, you can always go back and change it, but really it should be mostly finished, and you should just be adding the polishing touches to it. Like, you don't want to have a half written task and then try to go on to the next one. So time management is huge. And then find a friend who is willing to sit down with you and read through all your stuff really well, not just a glance. And then also, it's okay to walk away from the computer sometimes and just let everything settle and kind of breathe. And then when you come back to the next day, you'll have new ideas.
Thank you. And Isaac?
I would say time management as well. Like, jump on the ball as soon as you get started. Don't procrastinate. I got a good jump on things, and it was still pretty challenging to get everything done on time. So just hit the ground running would be my suggestion.
Thank you. And let me tell you, the music ed people are no strangers to hard work. You wouldn't believe the number of credit hours they have before they begin their residency year. So thank you, Isaac. And I'm going to go ahead and start with our last question. And I'm going to ask every panelist to answer this question. And so you can either, you know, if someone says what you said, you can also take this time to say anything that you've not had a chance to say that you think is important. And so, Abigail, the one thing that I want faculty to know is?
I think the one thing I want the faculty to know is how much we appreciate the support that they've given throughout this entire process. We've talked in different places throughout these questions about what perception we've gotten from them about the edTPA, and I think we all acknowledge that it's a difficult thing, but you truly get what you're willing to put into it. So I just am appreciative of the effort that they've given us and trying to understand what it's asking of us and just allowed us to grow through this process.
Thank you very much. Andrew?
Again, just to kind of build off of what she said, just to know how thankful I am for all of the help, and not only your help for me and my class particular, but your willingness to continue to grow, just like participating and tuning into this panel discussion, trying to gain more information to become better, to better serve future teachers like myself.
Thank you very much. Katie?
Hi, before I answer that last question, I want to jump back to question 3 and 4 about the misconceptions, because I didn't hear anybody say this, but a huge misconception that I had about the edTPA was I thought the edTPA, we were going to be assessed on how well our lesson plans were filled out and how closely we followed them in the video. And so I think that's a misconception that a lot of people had. I've heard several classmates say the same thing. But one thing that I want the faculty to know is we see how hard you all are working and know that we appreciate it. I know that this was a challenging year for you all with the whole praxis mix up and then now this COVID-19 thing, but we see how hard you all are working for us and we really appreciate it. So thank you all for everything that you do.
Thank you, Katie. Haley?
Just to kind of build off of what everybody else said, just how appreciative that I am, just the support that I've had over through this whole process, both academically and then just a shout out to you, Miss Yates, both academically and personally as well. And also just to the faculty, for this panel, be willing to reflect on, what you're doing well, what you could do to help students in the future, and then just the flexibility and the support through this whole thing that was very unexpected, and, what we can do from what we can do now.
Thank you, Haley. And Alex?
So obviously I want to echo that I'm very appreciative of all the support. I have friends at App. I have a friend who did edTPA at Georgia a few years ago, and their structure, their program is nowhere near what we get. They pretty much going into that Residency II type semester, that's the first time they even think about edTPA. They're writing their planning commentary. They're kind of starting green and trying to do it all as they go. So I think that my big takeaway is the structure of the program. I thought that seminar was set up very well this semester. I'm an hour away from campus, and so it was really nice to just come in, get my work done and get out of there and get home. Honestly, the Zoom thing, the amount of time you had, or the little amount of time you had to throw it together, I think it worked amazing, Miss Yates. So
a boot camp,
but just in general, like the Zoom seminar over Zoom, I think it worked. And you had 5 days to throw that together. And I think that, that might even be something to consider incorporating in future years, maybe not for every meeting, but maybe, every once in a while have one over Zoom. Looking back at one of the questions, number 3, a misconception that I had was that the edTPA was really more about task 2 than it was. It's a really small component once you get all the way through it. But in my mind, starting off is all about, I'm going to have to make this video, and the video is going to have to be great and all this. And once you actually do it, it's really just it's not even a third of the work. Task 2 is probably the lowest work requirement I felt. But just, yeah, to echo everyone else, really thankful for the support. I thought the structure of the program and seminars and everything was great. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Alex, you make our work easy. And Michaela Bright.
Yes. So one thing that I would say, and I would want y'all to know, is that y'all are so needed. I felt support from, I'll give a shout out to Miss Piercy, Mr. Mooneyham, Dr. Fisher. Those are a few that I worked closely with. They made me feel purpose. They made me feel wanted and important. And they make me feel like a good teacher. And if I'm half the teacher they have been to me, I'm doing pretty good.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. And Katie Norsen.
One of the things that I want the faculty to know, which everybody has said, just thank you for all the support, especially Mr. Mooneyham, like Michaela said, and Dr. Fisher. Dr. Fisher was one of our biggest cheerleaders. She was always there cheering us on, and Mr. Mooneyham was always there for help. Even when this whole COVID thing started off, I emailed a question and he was able to just jump on Zoom right away. And that is so amazing, just to have your professor there whenever you really need. They're always there willing to help. And thank you for your videos. Every time I had confusion, I would just go and find your videos, and they helped for sure. And the one thing I wanted to mention too was how much I think the winter class helped. Going into the winter class, I was like, oh, this is gonna take up my whole winter break. We have no breaks, but it was worth it. It was worth the couple weeks that we had it, and all your videos were helpful during that time too. And I just want to thank the faculty for all that you guys do.
Thank you, Katie.
Terryl, can I jump in and ask a question about that?
Yes.
Okay, so that winter course was kind of a scheduling nightmare because of financial aid and so forth. And so we have contemplated moving it to the last 5 weeks of fall term. And the reading and math lesson plans will be moved up as well. Thoughts on that?
Let's start with Haley Hodgson.
One thing I have to say about that is I feel like some students could have some issues moving their lesson plans up that much. I feel like there were still some scheduling issues with students trying to plan when we were planning those lessons, you know, for that January timeframe, just kind of depending on the style of your mentor teacher. So that's one thing to consider is, are the mentor teachers going to be prepared to kind of allow that flexibility for their student teachers to plan that far in advance? Another thing, and just a thought, and I don't know how financial aid works at all, but I know that I took a summer course one time that was actually a part of my my fall courses. It like went with my financial aid for my fall courses, but it was a summer boot camp, and they actually called it boot camp. So I don't know if maybe there's a way to kind of tie those in together. I did it at a community college, so I could ask about that.
Thank you. Nice thought. And Kayla Runyon, do you have a thought on Dr. Keefe's question?
Yeah, so I agree with what Haley said, just making sure, checking in with mentor teachers and seeing if they are comfortable with that sort of flexibility. I think that it would be good in terms of, you know, kind of avoiding that problematic issue that we had with financial aid. But I do think that, I don't know, I go back and forth with what I think about it. I think that it would be good to move it up to avoid that issue, but also keeping it closer to that January period might also just be more beneficial for student teachers.
Any of our other K-5 folks who'd like to speak on this, if you just put your hand up like this, I'll call on you. Krysta.
I thought the mini residency was a great idea, especially when I was starting to do my edTPA. I guess having it in the time frame that we did, like separating it into parts, it was more helpful for me to, because I'm personally, I'm a procrastinator, and it was really helpful to me to have it in parts. So I made myself do it in parts so that I could complete it. So I thought it was a great idea. I mean, I hated it while I was doing it, but I was grateful for it after it was done with.
Katie?
That's one of the things I like, that we had the deadlines during that winter course. If you pushed it into, I felt the fall semester was just so stressful and stuff. Having it during that winter course was it was our break, but as well still working. And it would have been during Residency II, having those kind of like breaking the seminar into those sections and having those deadlines as well. I think that would have helped not only me, but I think other people in my class, because like Krysta, I'm a procrastinator and I like to have a deadline. Even though you had the soft deadline and hard deadline, I really enjoyed having a deadline and I had to have it done by then. So the Midwest residency was great.
Any other K-5 folks like to speak on this question? Okay, then we'll move on. Shane Carroll, and thank you for that question, Dr. Keith. Again, one thing that I want faculty to know is, and also this is an opportunity to speak to anything that you didn't get an opportunity to say before.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Hi. I do have two things to say, if that's okay, but before I do that, I just want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for the past 2 years, and it doesn't even seem like, actually, a year and a half for me. I feel like Clemmer is a family to me, especially in the COA department. Mrs. Yates, I love you with all my heart, and Mr. Duty, and I know he's in here somewhere, and just been such a wonderful supervisor, and all the other teachers I've had have just guided me from entering in as a really young grad student to I feel very confident going into the field. And I don't know if any other programs you leave with this much confidence. And I believe that's all comes from you all, for you believing in us and doing whatever it takes for us to get to where we need to go. So I truly thank you. I was a secondary ed minor before I graduated with my history degree. And I switched because I dropped the minor because there were so many classes that were required for me, like economics and psychology and sociology, that were not required for me to pass a history praxis. Other states like North Carolina have an overall social studies licensure for me that I would have to take that encompasses all of those social studies. But for me, I didn't want to go an extra year just to get those extra 1,000 level classes just to graduate with the degree as a minor when I didn't need it for my licensure. Does that make any sense? So I don't know what it's like for any other one in secondary ed with their program, but for me in history, I really struggle with that. So that's why I switched. But so that was the first thing. But then I got into the MAT program and I absolutely loved it every step of the way. The other thing was there were times in the program I felt like there was a lack of cohesion between what was expected on the edTPA, what should all teachers, some classes really prepared me for what came next. A really big shout out to Dr. Barton and Advanced Ed Psych and Dr. Ward for the reading classes I took with her. I combined those into my teaching. I really, really felt like those mixed well together. But I felt like at times there were some misconceptions among faculty, like what's the edTPA? What objectives do we teach? How do we mix these all together? And so there were times in Residency 1 where I felt kind of lost, but all the professors were always there to help me along the way. So there's so much great in this program. I just want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart. So sending all the love out to you all.
Back at you. And Krysta, one thing you'd like faculty to know?
One thing that I'd like y'all to know is how much I really personally appreciate y'all. I know that through this whole year, I've had a lot of difficulties with testing, and I felt like you all were personally, I mean, I felt like I was supported by you all the time. I know that I was stressed a lot this semester, and I know that even teachers that I didn't even have and probably didn't even know their name, I know that they came to me and supported me during those times. And I truly think that there is a lot of great people in Clemmer College that are there to support students. A few things that I thought too, or what I wanted to address was questions 10 and 11. One thing that, let's see, let me see. One thing that I thought that the faculty done extremely well was I really liked how you, Miss Yates, separated the course into, or like I said earlier, you separated it into like sections, because I felt like I had, after I came home to Morristown, I done some of my edTPA with some of my friends at Carson-Newman, and I think it was like at the end of March, or not at the end of March, I think it was like, I don't know when it was. It was not too long ago, but I know that I was getting done with task 3, and some of my friends from Carson-Newman was just starting task 1, and I felt like by having those deadlines throughout the semester, I feel like it forced me to get it done, and I wasn't so overwhelmed at the end, and I was grateful for that. And especially the videos, those really helped me. One thing I think that could improve though is like letting our mentor teachers know what the edTPA is, because a lot of our mentor teachers didn't have to do the edTPA. And so I know personally my mentor teacher didn't even know what the edTPA was. And so just explaining that to them and how important it is, I think that would really benefit. And I know, Ms. Yates, that we've talked about before, how the math edTPA is really not supported that much. And me doing my edTPA in math, I felt like I wasn't as supported as some of the literacy people doing my edTPA, but I know that you all are trying to work to improve that already. So.
Thank you for expressing that so well, Krysta. Thank you. And we'll go to Jordan, the same question.
First, I wanted to say thank you to the faculty. I reached out to Dr. Robertson, and it was like, I was like, I need a letter of recommendation very soon. I've got a job interview. I really need this. Can you please help me out? And with everything that she had going on, she still managed to be able to write an amazing recommendation letter. And I know all the faculty would do that as well. So thank you guys for really wanting us to do the best that we can and get those jobs. And there's not a lot of places that are like that, a lot of colleges that are that way. And I also wanted to say thank you to the supervisors. My supervisor, Miss Hodgson, she's amazing. She was so flexible with me. I had an evaluation, and I found out there was pictures during my evaluation. It was picture day. So she was very flexible with that. And she was like, don't worry about it. We'll just get it figured out. And it's just so nice to have somebody that was a teacher there to really give you that feedback along with your mentor teacher, just having double the feedback there as well. And then I wanted to add to sort of what Krysta said. I think that I felt very supported. I did elementary math for my edTPA as well. I do see how we had so many more literacy classes and so many more reading classes, and didn't really have any math classes up until senior year with the Residency I class that Dr. Price taught, that I felt was super duper beneficial. But she has been absolutely amazing. Coming to edTPA seminar, she was absolutely incredible. I felt so much more confident after talking to her and be able to sit down and be like, okay, what does this term mean? Because I was really struggling with some of that, but she really boosted my confidence, and she was amazing at seminar for sure.
Thank you so much, Jordan. And Lindsey?
Hi. Again, one thing I want to say is thank you for the faculty for helping so much. Definitely edTPA is a rough thing to work on, but it went, I think, as smoothly as it could have went because of the faculty. And another thing I wanted to add to question 11, what the faculty in my program is doing well. I think that connecting everything to theories was something that was very easy for me because of all of the practice I had even before residency. It was really easy to justify the things that I was doing because of all of the discussions we had about theorists. I could easily pull a theory, find a specific theory, and justify my answer because of them. And just a shout out I wanted to do to Miss Castle, Dr. Shelton, for helping me so much during residency and giving me support. And then I thought she was in here earlier, but I think she left. Dr. Sharp helped me a lot during and before residency.
We've got so many good faculty. Haley?
Okay, sorry, I couldn't find my unmute button. So one shout out, or not really shout out, but just thing that I want faculty to know is I'm just really thankful for the amount of time that you all have put into, well, all of our education, but specifically in Residency II. I know it's a really big chunk of your time to come to our seminars and sit and read all that work. So I'm just really thankful for that. And another thing is, it's kind of like advice, back to number 12, would be to just encourage next year students to really read the rubrics and read the questions beforehand. It's really daunting, it's a lot of work, but the more that they put into it on the front end, the more it's going to make sense once they start it. So.
Thank you, Haley. Hannah Kilgore.
One thing that I really appreciated was the flexibility of a lot of the faculty, because I've had to learn how to be more flexible this year because Shane mentioned earlier people having to change it at the last minute. I had to change my edTPA, and I'm kind of a control freak, so that kind of freaked me out. And so I've appreciated everybody else's flexibility and patience, because I've had to learn that's really important.
Thank you, Hannah. Seth Davenport.
First, I want to thank Dr. Wheeler for helping me stay enrolled through financial aid. He wrote so many letters for me to help me stay on campus and keep me enrolled. So Dr. Wheeler, if you're hearing this, thank you very much. Second thing I want faculty to know is how much we admire your all's feedback. And I was just talking with Professor Cook just about how maybe for task 1, like in Residency 1, doing like a mock task 1. So for SPED, we have to do it on like one particular student, but maybe we do it on a mock student. So that way, like task 1, we could write it like how we would write a paper, and you guys could offer us specific feedback on like, hey, this doesn't align here, this doesn't align there, instead of, receiving feedback where like, it's just like, hey, like this one, go refer to prompt or the rubric 3 and when you're looking at prompt 1D. So it's kind of like, so that was kind of vague, but being able to have that specific feedback, if we do it like on a mock student or a mock class, like I think that would be great. And that's all.
That does sound like a good idea. Thank you very much. Kayla?
I want faculty to know that I'm super thankful for their constant support and encouragement. I'm thankful for all the knowledge that they bestowed on me and just their willingness to go and be above and beyond to make sure that each one of us felt confident in our teaching.
You are just too nice. Let's see, Catherine Rambo.
So I had a really great experience, especially at the end of it now. I can look back and see how all the classes really built on each other, specifically for edTPA and just to benefit each other. There's nothing that I look back on and I think like really it could have been better, because now that I'm at the end, like I said, I can see how it all fit. Dr. Sharp was amazing. I don't think that task 3 assessment would have been as much of a breeze if I hadn't had her class. And of course, our seminar teachers were wonderful. And then also Dr. Malkus, there was a lot of things in that technology class that I ended up needing to use for edTPA. So it was all wonderful, really.
Thank you so much. And Isaac.
Like it's been said before, I'd like to thank the faculty for their support. I know I've had to do a lot of emailing in the past 4 years, and they've always been supportive of that. I'd like to shout out Dr. Blackman. She has helped me tremendously through all of this. I'm sure she'll be glad when I'm gone, but because I've emailed her a bunch, but I thank her for that. One suggestion I would have, though, for both departments is the communication between the music department and the College of Ed is kind of iffy at best. You know, there's sometimes throughout my 4 years I've been kind of in the dark. So that would be my suggestion. Thank you.
And that's a good one. Thank you. So we're at the point now where we can take questions from faculty who are here. And so if you have questions, just speak up. Did we do too good of a job? Well, it sounds like we've gotten a lot of good feedback, and I really want to tell you how much we appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do this as a service to the college. And I understand that it's not easy to come onto a platform like this, knowing that it's going to be recorded, and to give honest feedback. But I'm very proud of you and your professionalism, and I look forward to seeing where you go and what you do, all the places you go. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for everything that you do, Miss Yates. And I want to give a special shout out to the TRC department, because without them, it would have been bad. They deserve a huge shout out.
Huge.
I just want to add for a second, as a supervisor, this is my second year supervising, and this department is an amazing department. I'm a product of Clemmer College, and since 1985. It's still going strong, and it's a wonderful program. So thank you guys so much. You students, you're like an epic year. I don't think this has ever happened in the world. So, you know, you're one of a kind, and you're going to do fabulous. And if anybody's going to be the expert on online teaching, it's going to be you guys. So congratulations in the upcoming weeks of graduation too.
So what I thought would be neat is that if we could, all the faculty could unmute themselves and clap for the, and say, woohoo!
Hey, great job.
Yay!
Great platform.
Thank you.
I'm trying to. Yay!
That's great.
Huzzah!
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for your attendance, and I will be sharing the recording soon.
Thank
you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thanks. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Be sure to wash hands. Bye, Abigail.
Wash hands.
Let me say bye.
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 Bye. Bye.